Hey, friendo, Steve here. Welcome to my easy election guide. Tuesday is election day, and I figured there might be some of you out there who might not follow politics all that closely, who might be curious about what's going to be going down on Tuesday. And I figured, hey, I've got some extra time. I follow this stuff way too closely, so I would do a really quick, easy election guide answering some of the more important questions. Hopefully, you'll be joining me and Larson on election night this Tuesday as we play some video games, have some drinks, and basically celebrate all this America stuff together as a big friendo group. That's going to be going down live at twitch.tv/Steven Larson. As for this guide right here, I've broken this down into a couple questions which are easily accessible. If you start getting bored by whatever I'm talking about, you can skip ahead to the next one. I got timestamps here, so you can skip ahead if you want to with Steve's little civics lesson here. So we'll start off with question number one. This is a pretty important one. How the hell do these American presidential elections work? Because shouldn't it be pretty simple? Shouldn't you just have, all the millions and hundreds of millions of people that are eligible to vote? They all vote. You take all those votes and you say, okay, who voted for whom? And then whoever voted more for one person, that person should win. Like in 2016, Hillary Clinton, 5 million more Americans voted for her than Donald Trump. And yet she lost because we don't determine the outcome of presidential elections via the popular vote, which is what I was just talking about. We do it via the Electoral College. What is that, you might ask? Well, each state has a certain number of representatives. And depending on the size and population of each state will depend on the number of representatives we have. Basically, each state, each of the 50 states is worth a certain number of points, if you will. And it's on the candidates to then secure the votes of all those different states. So, for example, if more people in California vote for Joe Biden than Donald Trump, which is totally going to happen because California is a very blue state, they usually vote Democrat, then the number of electoral votes that California is worth goes into the bank of Joe Biden. Similarly, over there in, let's say, Arkansas, which is traditionally a very, very red state, Donald Trump will probably win that. He gets the points from that particular state, from Arkansas, and he gets to put them in his bank. And then whoever gets to 270 first, they win the election. And that brings us to swing states or battleground states. Also, sometimes they're referred to as purple because they can go red, they can go blue, but they don't really reliably go one way or the other. And those are the big states that candidates really fight over in any given presidential election. We're talking about states like Pennsylvania, Arizona, Michigan, Wisconsin, North Carolina, Iowa. What am I missing? Did I say Arizona already? Probably. Nevada sometimes. Texas, surprisingly, might be leaning. It's leaning red, but it's kind of in the toss-up territory this time around. So whoever gets to 270 electoral votes wins the presidential election. So that's what these people are fighting for, the swing states. Question number two. When will this damn thing be over? When will we know who won? That's probably the biggest question on everybody's mind now. Typically, because most of these swing states are on the eastern side, east of the Mississippi River. It's on the eastern side of the country. Usually, we find out who's going to be president the night of election, the election day. And so around 8 p.m. Eastern time, when polls start to close, the precincts start reporting in. They do that pretty quickly. You can very quickly develop an idea. Okay, Florida, that's the other big swing state. You start to get an idea, okay, which way is Ohio going? Which way is Florida going? Which way is Pennsylvania going? Because we usually know which states are locked down, blue and red. We know where there's going to go. So we want to know where the swing states are going to go. So around 8 p.m., maybe 9 p.m., maybe 10 p.m., these states start to be called. So the precincts, they start reporting in, which is where people vote. They start reporting in. The counties start reporting in. They give it to the news media, and then the news media will start to call these things and say, hey, we're pretty sure that this state is going for this person. And if that holds true, this person has to win this one in order to win, but that's not going that way. So usually election night, or between 8 and maybe like 10 p.m. Eastern, is usually when we get a good indication. Now, that's possible this year if we're looking at a landslide situation. If states like Texas, which like I said is a toss-up, usually goes red, but if that goes for Joe Biden this time around, if the Democrats turn that blue, then you can pretty much figure this is going to be a landslide in his favor. All the other swing states are probably going to be going blue as well, even if they haven't counted the votes. And that's very important this year because of COVID and because of the overwhelmingly high turnout that we're already experiencing. Today is Sunday night that I'm recording this, and already I think it's up to like 70 or 80% of the number of votes that were placed in 2016 have already come in, and we're still 2 days away from Election Day. This is a hugely high turnout vote. 2016 was not, but Donald Trump, like him or not, he has sort of made politics and government invade the popular culture. I mean, he's a reality TV guy. That's kind of what he does. And because he's invading our TVs every single night on the news and saying outlandish things, he gets a lot of attention. That gets a lot of attentions of the voters. It helps get his base all riled up, and it helps maybe people who are tired of seeing him get riled up, and they're like, oh, I'm going to go vote for this guy. Get out of here. So there's a lot more people. But then there's also this pandemic happening right now. So more people than ever. More states than ever are allowing, in some cases requiring, mailed-in voting, absentee voting. A lot of states are going, they usually do this, early voting. So a lot of votes have already come in. The problem is because there's so many mailed-in votes, which, by the way, is a totally legitimate way to vote, because there's so many of them, some states don't allow the precincts to start counting these votes until Election Day, which is kind of ridiculous if you ask me. So states like Pennsylvania, we probably won't know the final vote in Pennsylvania, which could be the determining state this year. We might not know that until a day, 2 days, a week later. We won't know what the exact number is. So it's possible, I'll put it this way. If it's a landslide for Joe Biden, which right now the polls suggest we might be looking at a landslide for the Democrats, that's what the polls say. If that's the case, we'll probably know election night. If that's not the case, and if Trump is making this closer, or even if he's eking out a win, it might be a little while before we actually know who's won the presidential election. I would think that it probably won't be more than a week. In the case of Bush versus Gore in 2000, it took like 6 weeks to find out. And that election came down to 537 votes in Florida that swung the election to George Bush. At a certain point, the Supreme Court was like, all right, we got to stop counting. We got to call a winner. So they just gave it to George Bush. Anyways, so when will we know? Either that night, if it's a big landslide, or could be a week. But there you go. Next question. What states should we keep an eye on? I already mentioned which states were the sort of swing states. We've got Pennsylvania. Donald Trump basically has no chance to win the presidential election if he doesn't win Pennsylvania. Bad news for him. Right now, Joe Biden is up in the polls by like 5 points. There were 2 polls that came in today, that showed Biden ahead 7 points, and another one that showed him ahead like 8 points or something like that. So Donald Trump needs Pennsylvania mathematically to win based on what he already has locked down. Joe Biden has a lot more paths to victory than Donald Trump, which is why his odds seem to be a lot better. But polling errors do happen. This would have to be a massive, massive polling error. We're going to talk about polling errors in a little bit here. Ohio, Arizona, those are also battleground states right now. It's pretty much a toss-up in Ohio, maybe leaning Trump. Arizona, Biden's up by 3 points in Arizona. North Carolina, Biden's up by a couple points there. I mentioned Texas earlier. That's traditionally a red state. If Joe Biden is able to turn that blue, then he's got it on lock. I mean, this is going to be a landslide. He's probably going to get 400 electoral votes. Michigan and Wisconsin also, Trump could really use those, but those are up right now in the polls pretty big for Joe Biden. So again, Donald Trump would need a pretty big polling error to pull this off. Is it possible? Yes, it's possible. But sorry, I got to tell the wife Lucky Charms. We got to get some Lucky Charms. Is it possible? Yeah, sure, it's possible. Right now, my favorite polling aggregate, 538 Politics, 538.com, all spelled out, not the numbers. They have a great polling aggregate, which currently shows that Donald Trump has about a 10% chance to win if all the polls are correct or even outside or even like within the margin of error. Joe Biden still has a pretty decent chance to win this year. This time in 2016, Hillary Clinton had like a 7 in 10 chance to win, and Donald Trump had like a 30% chance to win, and he did. He eked out a really, really close victory, which brings us to that other question. Weren't polls wrong in 2016? So yes and no. The big difference between 2016 and 2020 is there's actually a couple of big differences, and I'm keeping this very, very simple here, is that in 2016, there were far more undecided voters. One thing to keep in mind in 2016 is that Donald Trump was a very unpopular candidate, even to this day. Throughout his presidential first term, he has never risen in the approval polls aggregated by more than 50%. His aggregate approval rating, which means you take all the polls that are being conducted, you put them all together, you average them out. Where does his approval rating stand? It's never been above 45, maybe 46%. He's never had a majority of Americans on his side during his job. Hillary Clinton, her favorability rating, which is kind of the same thing, but she's not in office, never hit more than 50%. It was always around 45%. So she was a historically unpopular candidate, as was Donald Trump. So he was able to squeak out a victory. There were so many undecided voters. If you took a look at polls back then, usually it was like Hillary Clinton's up at so-and-so place, 46% to Donald Trump's 43% or 48% to 45%. She was never able to break 50% in the important states that she needed. And so you had all these undecided voters who then swung really, really hugely for Donald Trump in the last couple days. Not helping things for her case was James Comey, who I believe was with the FBI at the time. He released a letter to Congress saying, hey, she's being investigated. The New York Times put it on the front of their newspaper. It made big headlines. Hey, she's under investigation by the FBI. And that seemingly swung a lot of people. And this was weeks and weeks and weeks after the Donald Trump Hollywood Access tape, where he started saying some really vulgar things about people. This was way after that. And so it was kind of like more fresh. This was the big October surprise, was the James Comey letter. So that seemed to have swung a lot of voters over towards Donald Trump, and he was able to get, to basically turn around Hillary Clinton's 6.5 point lead according to the polls in Wisconsin. He was able to turn that by I think it was a couple thousand votes, or 70,000 or 100,000, something like that. So he was able to squeak out these wins in these battleground states and take the election, even though she had 5 million more people voting for her across the country. So this year, it's a little bit different. Joe Biden, his hold in the polls has been a lot steadier. It has been less of a bumpy ride. And in a lot of the big polls, there are way fewer undecided voters. So Joe Biden has 50% in, let's say, Pennsylvania, to Trump's 45% or 48% given the poll. So Biden, there's a lot fewer undecided voters. There isn't as much of a third-party threat there kind of was at in 2016. This year, a lot less. And so Biden's strength in the polls does seem to be significantly better and steadier and more stable than Hillary Clinton. A lot less people dislike him as a candidate compared to Hillary Clinton. He's actually got a pretty good likability ratings. So his standing seems to be a bit more stable than Donald Trump. So were the polls wrong? A lot of polls were, but all in all, when you aggregated the polls, Donald Trump at the end of 2016, right before the election, still had a pretty darn good chance to win it. And of course, he did. Next question. So come on, Steve. Who's winning this damn thing? I don't know. But if the polling is anywhere near correct, Joe Biden still wins pretty decisively. Even if there is a polling error the size of 2016, even if everything shifted the way it did in 2016, Joe Biden still wins pretty decisively. That Pennsylvania state is out there, and man, that's going to be a tough one for Trump to overcome. I mean, has he maybe drummed up a lot more support? Maybe people who hadn't voted in 2016 and discovered, his sort of cult-like persona and really got turned on to it. I mean, he's drawn 20,000 people strong at these rallies. Maybe he's finding a lot more people that are going to vote for him. Maybe the polls aren't connecting with those people that are out there, these sort of hidden Trump voters. That is a possibility. I mean, that's something that maybe is within that 10% of possibility that could happen. But there doesn't seem to be much evidence of that at this point. I don't know who's going to win. Right now, the way it stands, Joe Biden nationally has like a 9-point advantage in the polls. That's national. That's when the polling centers just call up random phone numbers in the book. Doesn't matter what state they're in, et cetera, et cetera. If you go down to the state level, Joe Biden has a lead in pretty much all of the big battleground states, a significant lead in a couple of them, and a tighter lead in some of the other ones. So we'll see what that looks like. Next question. What other races should we be looking at? Well, here's the thing. The American political system basically relies on 3 branches of government. You got the executive branch, which is the presidency. He's his own branch of government. You got the House of Congress, which is the House of Representatives, and you got the Senate. And then you got the Supreme Court. So right now, up for election, the Supreme Court is decided. I mean, that's just the president will appoint them, and then the Senate confirms them. You got the Senate and you got the House of Representatives, and a bunch of those people are up right now for re-election. Right now, the Democrats control the House of Representatives. They're like a 99% lock to hold on to that. The Senate is a completely different issue. Right now, they're down by I think 3 seats. And there seems to be, according to 538, there's a 77% chance that the Democrats are going to retake the Senate. So according to the polls, Democrats might look pretty good come Wednesday morning or whenever this thing is decided. You can take a look at certain seats in the Senate. One of the ones that's sort of the biggest one on the minds of a lot of people are Lindsey Graham versus Jamie Harrison in South Carolina. Lindsey Graham has been a senator there for decades and decades. And Jamie Harrison seems to have a lot of momentum on his side. So there are some seats in the Senate, which, could flip to the Democrat side. A lot of polling out there suggests that might actually happen. Let's see here. And then, of course, if the Democrats win the Senate, and they have the House of Representatives, and they got the presidency, at that point, you can just sort of do whatever you want. You want to put more judges on the Supreme Court? You go ahead and do that. You want to get rid of the filibuster? You can do that. You can look up those terms if you don't know what they are, and shame on you for not paying attention in government class. Another question here. Hey, Steve, I've been hearing about a bunch of... Actually, we'll do this question first. Hey, Steve, earlier today, I heard that Donald Trump, one of his guys, said that on election night, they're just going to call it for themselves. And then what is that all about? Well, here's the thing. Donald Trump and his friends there in his administration, his campaign, rather, I should say, they probably don't like how certain polls look. They've been outspent by the Democrats. And so right now their strategy seems to be, if they're still counting votes into the next day, which is a totally normal thing, we're just going to act like those votes don't matter. And because Democrats overwhelmingly vote more either absentee or mail-in, they think that because the Republicans, like Donald Trump, is going to have a vote lead heading into the end of the night, that'll just give him the ability to say, hey, I won. The problem is nobody will care. I mean, I'm sure he will. I'm sure his supporters will be like, oh, cool, we won. But no news outlet is going to then say, oh, the president said he won, so we're just going to call it for him. No, they all are required to pay attention to the actual precincts that are reporting in. So if Donald Trump declares victory on that night, the networks will probably say Donald Trump has falsely claimed that he won the presidency because Pennsylvania those votes still have yet to be counted. And yes, he might be in the lead right now, but the next day you will see what they call a blue shift or a Democratic shift, which is where, the precincts will come in and then you'll see Joe Biden start to creep up and up and up and up, and then he'll land eventually wherever his spot is. So that strategy is probably not going to work. It just seems like desperation. It's like you're a basketball team. You have a lead going into, let's say, like the fourth quarter, and you just decide, hey, that's good enough for us. We're good. We won. Goodbye, everybody. You leave the court. The referees are then going to have you forfeit the game, and they're just going to give the game to the other team, because that's not how it works. And in this case, Donald Trump, as much as he would like to, probably, he doesn't control the officials here. All the state governments control this stuff. And by and large, they're going to stick to what's going on here, because I think most of those people, Republican or Democrat, they want to see democracy in action, because that's how that stuff works. So he can say what he wants. He says a lot of weird stuff, but he can declare whatever he wants on election night. If it's not, if the polls aren't reporting in, if the ballots haven't been counted, the legitimate ballots haven't been counted, it doesn't matter what he says. None of that stuff matters. So let's see here. Next question. I've heard about a bunch of lawsuits going on right now. Steve, what's that all about? I hate to paint this in a way that sounds like I'm leaning one way or the other. For those of you who know me, know which way I lean, but I'm trying to make this video as sort of down the middle as I can. It does seem like one of the strategies for the Republicans at this point is to try to simply invalidate otherwise valid votes. So, for example, in Texas, they moved to have over 100,000 votes in Harris County thrown out because it was like part of the curbside voting program they have, which was deemed, like last month, totally legal. They're trying to say, no, it's not legal. So the Texas Supreme Court, which is all Republicans, just today said, we're not going to throw out 100,000 votes. We're Republicans, but we're not going to do that. So that might go to the Supreme Court. I don't know. There do seem to be lawsuits all over the place. I think that's less of an issue if it ends up being a landslide. If things get really, really close, if Pennsylvania comes down to like 1,000 votes or 2,000 votes or 500 votes like it did in 2000, things are going to get probably pretty messy. And you'll see a lot more of that stuff. But right now, there are lawsuits being thrown. Both sides have literally thousands of lawyers all over the country making sure they're keeping each other in check with all this stuff, because the Republicans kind of think, hey, we're way down in the polls. Let's try to do what we can to maintain some power. It's kind of pathetic, to be honest with you, but because it's not really in the interest of democracy. You see other stuff going on, voter suppression. Hopefully, with all this stuff, getting a giant spotlight on it this year, a lot of that stuff will be corrected for the next go around. So there you go. And then the last question here. Second to last question. Does my vote really count? Yeah, of course it does. In 2000, the entire presidential race, I mentioned this before, came down to 537 votes in Florida, which is the decisive state that year. So yes, your vote absolutely does count. Please take a look at what's going on in your own community, because yes, you've got these national races going on. You've got these big state Senate races, or these big national Senate races going on in your state. Perhaps you've got House of Representatives elections going on in your district. You've got county elections. You've got city elections. You've got mayoral races, if I could say that word properly. So yeah, get involved in your community, man. That's how you can shape your own neck of the woods, if you will, is by voting. So yes, absolutely, your vote totally does count. I'm pretty sure that a lot of states will let you register. I don't know. A lot of states have different registration dates. So if you register, be sure to go vote. Just do it safely. Put on a mask, social distance. Most places make it pretty safe for you to vote. Sometimes you got to take your whole day out. I mean, I've seen long lines at some of the precincts for early voting. People are really enthusiastic about politics this year. We'll find out exactly what that means on Tuesday and the days that follow. But yeah, absolutely, man. Your vote totally does count, so you should go do it. My last question here is I'm somehow, some way undecided, Steve. I'm one of the 3%, 5% of people who are undecided. Who should I vote for? Research. Do your research. It takes a couple hours sit down, get online, try to find some reputable news sources. I like PBS, NPR, and look at what the candidates have done. You got one guy who seems to like to push conspiracy theories on his Twitter feed, who claims that he led us to like the best economy ever, even though if you take a look at the guy before him and his economy, it was really the exact same thing. So it was basically inherited, and then he like cut a bunch of regulations, and you know, so it's probably going to screw us in the future. And then the other guy is like super duper old, and you know, hopefully he's not out there driving because he might fall asleep at the wheel, and he likes to smell people sometimes. Yeah, I can think of worse things than that. That's who it is. You know, I don't consider this the lesser of two evils, man. Some people, they're out there and they say, "Oh, it's all the same. It's all the same. It's just, it doesn't matter, man. They're all crap. They're all bad." Case can be made. One might be worse than the other, but I'll let you guys decide that. So yeah, there you go. There's my voter guide. That's it. If you're going to leave a comment, be respectful. That's all I ask. And hopefully you'll join us on Tuesday for our election night stream, our election night coverage. We're going to make the chat follower for a day and up only. So make sure you follow us on the Twitch. If you act up here, your comment will be deleted in the YouTube comments. If you act up there, our mods are gonna ban you. So yeah, keep it civil. We're going to be joking around. We're going to be playing some games. And yeah, it should be a lot of fun. So hopefully we'll see you there. Thanks for watching. Be sure to sub to the channel. Till next time, I'll talk to you later.